Well, today we are joined by Zain, who is going to walk us through the VC that he's representing. So I'll kick off with asking if you can introduce yourself, your personal background, and what you're doing at the firm.
Sure. So I've started numerous startups, most failed. My last one did pretty well. Ended up selling that for $780 million. And then after that, I decided to join the dark side. And I did it in a unique way. I joined a private equity firm that was buying real estate. I figured I want to get into PropTech and invest in PropTech. And so joining a real estate fund gave me the opportunity to create a new venture fund within that. So Bluefield Capital has a real estate fund where we buy real estate all throughout the US and soon, globally. And then we now have a PropTech venture capital fund at Bluefield as well. And in that, we're actually investing much more globally. We've got numerous startups that are international.
Yeah, interesting. Not the normal route, I suppose, into real estate necessarily. And I guess in terms of the companies we work with, obviously a number of PropTech startups, and often they come to us and say, we're looking for introductions, or we've got this great product that we're trying to pitch. So it's always good to know more about the VC firms that we're working with. So can you tell me a little bit more about the VC arm, what their investment thesis is, and sort of what stage you usually invest at?
Yes, we invest at the seed to pre-series A stage. What that means is a company must have at least $100,000 in annual recurring revenue. Note the word ARR, recurring, not necessarily service-based revenues, sort of discount that. There has to be some presence in the US or very serious committed plans to enter the US market. We're absolutely fine with startups that are based anywhere in the world, as long as they want to target the US, already have some traction in the US. We like to work with companies that can help our portfolio of real estate. Our portfolio of real estate is quite broad. We own real estate throughout the US, a lot of multifamily, but we also own hotels, senior care living facilities, industrial warehouses. We're open to experimenting with new asset classes too. We're looking at doing something in ghost kitchens and the single family rental space. So yeah, that's the main situation. One more thing I'd say is we tend to write smaller checks, $300,000. But I tend to find that a lot of startups are always struggling to find the lead investor. And when you ask them, what do you mean by lead investor? It really means, because someone just set terms, they don't have to be the largest check. In many cases, because we find that investors are shy about leading, we're happy to say, okay, we'll lead the round. We may not take a board seat. We may if we put in more than 300, but we'll set terms and we'll do the due diligence and we'll help put the round together. We've done that probably in half the cases we've been involved.
Yeah, interesting. And sort of part of what you mentioned about those types of businesses leads on to my next question. Can you perhaps talk about some of the companies you've invested in to date? Because I noticed, as you said, trying to, I guess, relate it to some of the assets that that you have ownership over. And I can see from the likes of Canopy, multifamily, DigiBuild, construction, there seems to be a varied bunch in there to date.
A fairness of random selection. It's like asking a parent what their favorite child is, right? All the startups are large, obviously. So I think I'll try to pick a diverse range of startups, and I think we'll start with the ones you mentioned. Canopy Analytics was very interesting for us, and we actually joined the board of the startup, because owning real estate, it is such a nightmare getting a transparent view on what's happening with our real estate, especially when we have real estate all throughout the US. And we've got property managers in various places. So a platform like Canopy promises us the ability to see all our key KPIs through a central dashboard. And then Canopy I'd sort of describe as it's like Dropbox meets Slack, where you can have all your central information and documents stored. You can have team functionality to manage your team and set tasks. So Canopy was a no-brainer for us. It touches our portfolio. And then to use the other example you mentioned, DigiBuild, one of our more recent investments, I look at blockchain, and to me, it seems like if there's a strong use case for it, it's definitely in construction. With the amount of fraud, with the amount of lack of trust happening, and so much litigation. And so really like the DigiBuild team, and top tier investors already. Kim Draper's investing in the company, and they just got into YC as well. So really, really solid there. And the use case being blockchain for construction technology.
Yeah.
And then, in the spirit of threes, I'll mention one more, totally at random once again.
Yeah.
Say, I'll pick Stake.
Right.
Stake is basically realizing that renters are typically unbanked.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can create a savings mechanism for these renters, you basically become their bank. So what they do is they use multifamily operators as a distribution channel. So rather than giving a concession to your tenants, like get 1 month free or 2 months free if you sign up, instead, sign up via Stake and we'll give you cash back. And you can unlock cash back and rewards as you pay your rent on time. And so Stake is now getting hundreds and hundreds of tenants every time they sign up a multifamily operator, and they're one of the fastest growing companies in our portfolio. They've already had several markups and are I think they're going to be the future of fintech meets PropTech.
That's amazing. And is that, I guess, quite a good segue on to my next question. I think, one of the challenges, I guess, for people like yourself is how do you actually go about evaluating potential portfolio companies? Because there are so many out there. And I guess part of it is seeing if it may fit in with your portfolio of assets, but how do you do it for other companies as well?
I think it always comes down to the team, especially when you're betting at the seed and pre-series A stage. There are chances that the company may need to pivot and refine or expand. You're betting on the founding team. I like to look for technical founders. I mean, I'm a founder myself. I've started companies and I wasn't a technical co-founder myself. And that really hurt me. I could have built my business to tens of millions. Like one of my competitors is now worth that much. So I look for technical founders and I look for well-rounded teams. I try to find diversity. It's very hard in PropTech. I mean, if diversity is hard in in venture capital, real estate is so male dominated, it's even harder to find diverse, female founders. So I look for that as well. And then, market size, a fit with our portfolio and some of the criteria that we mentioned, like minimum 100K ARR and ideally, some traction in the US and the ability to work with us as a customer. Not always mandatory, but that makes it a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we get a lot of candidates who come to us who are, I guess, looking to either get into PropTech or indeed the VC space. I guess you had a different channel route into VC, but do you have any advice for people that are thinking of going down that route?
I do, and I want to say something much different than what you'd probably hear, because the advice tends to be so generic, and let's skip the generic rubbish, right? Here's my opinion. There's a lot of fluff in real estate and PropTech, and it's really hard to know what's real and isn't real, especially when you don't come from a technical background. Highly recommend someone gets involved in the technical side. Either get operating experience or do a few courses. Do a few courses in AI. Every PropTech startup I meet tends to say they're using AI. When you dig into it, well, what is AI? I mean, are they really using AI? It's a buzzword.
It's a big buzzword, yeah.
And another problem is real estate. The barriers to entry in PropTech are very, very low, even though it's a hard market to gain traction in because you need to have relationships. The barriers are low. What that means is that you don't find technical founders very often. So people tend to outsource their technology. And if you're a founder and you're outsourcing your technology, there's a huge element of risk. You can be held hostage. I've seen this happen, by the way. You can be held hostage by the firm that you outsource to, or, you might not have a good technical DNA. So I think if you want to break into VC, you'll really stand out if you do a couple of courses online, and these courses aren't very intensive. I mean, they can be intensive, but do them. Then you'll be able to talk to founders in a way that they'll respect you, and you'll be able to offer some technical, some technical diligence help, which VCs really need in this space, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that more and more. I mean, I think everyone is demanding more people with that technical background. So whether you're looking to get into VC or looking to become part of a founding team, I think that is, definitely an integral skill to have.
I'd say, especially if you're not sure yet and you've got time on your side and you're comfortable, but you do want to go into VC or PropTech operating role, do a couple of courses on the weekend. You never know, you might turn out to like it, and it will really make a big difference. And it's not something I think you can do on the job. It's ideally something you do as you're trying to break into the industry. Once you're on the job, it is like although I think PropTech is a good opportunity right now, there's a flood of startups and you just become so busy endlessly that you don't have much time to refine skills, especially technical skills.
And to sort of close us off on this one, so what are some of your key objectives for the rest of the year, apart from traveling to Europe?
We want to create a diversified portfolio, and I don't just mean diversity in terms of, the typical sense. I mean, the type of assets we have in our PropTech portfolio, I really want to capture a big segment of PropTech.
Mm-hmm.
So, our investment in basking analytics gives us access to the corporate office space. Mm-hmm. Crypto, or rather blockchain and construction tech, DigiBuild. So it's really it's like a chemist role. It's really weird to say that, but I'm trying to create the right elements. And every time I add a startup, I have to take a step back and think, okay, are we overexposed to a certain segment? Where are we missing right now? And I'm seeing a lot of the same old in PropTech. And I really look for things that are different and unique. And that's my challenge. Every time I invest in a startup, I need to make sure that, is this fund an index for PropTech? Right. And also the other thing, really hard. I mean, I've talked to, as I'm an LP in a numerous bunch of funds, many haven't even announced. I speak to all the PropTech funds and they're like, yeah, competitive conflicts are so hard to avoid. So when you invest in one startup, that might preclude you from even looking or investing in a bunch of other startups. So being really deliberate and careful. And then I don't think people appreciate this, at least for me. I do a lot of due diligence before I invest in a startup. And that, takes a lot of bandwidth. And I believe in a fund this size and this small, and I like to be hands-on, the general partner has to do the due diligence. You have to write the investment memo, you have to call the customers, you have to dive in deep, and that precludes you from sometimes taking a meeting. If you want to look at an opportunity, having a second stage meeting or a third stage meeting is so intensive, because now, you're going deeper into the business, and that means you can't look at another 10 opportunities for a while, and they're sort of on the back burner whilst you dive deep into one. So getting a commitment from a VC and getting a second meeting, it doesn't sound as simple as let me book some time on your Calendly. It's like, okay, you're asking this VC to dive deep into your business. And if they're not well resourced, or they're like me, I want to stay pretty lean, time is very valuable, and you don't have that time.
Well, looking forward to seeing who else joins the portfolio. And I guess if anyone has any questions, please reach out to either myself or Zain. And thanks very much for jumping on.
Thank you so much. And if you want to reach me, it's zain@bluefieldcap.com. You know how rain is spelled R-A-I-N? That's how you spell Zain, Z-A-I-N or Z-A-I-N for the British amongst the listeners, at bluefieldcap.com. Thank you so much.
Perfect.